My name is Sienna, and the night my world collapsed began like any other. I came home humming to myself, still clutching the binder where I'd tucked away wedding notes, guest lists, flower arrangements, seating charts. The kind of details brides are supposed to be lost in. The hallway smelled faintly of his cologne, and for a moment it made me smile. But then I noticed something that froze me mid-step. The bedroom door was cracked open, and laughter floated out. Not just laughter. A soft, intimate laugh I knew wasn't mine. I pushed the door open an inch wider. My heart hammered in my throat. There he was, my fiancé, the man who swore he'd spend forever with me. And beside him, tangled in sheets that were supposed to be ours, was my own sister. My baby sister. The one who once cried in my arms after breakups. The one I defended against bullies. The one I thought I'd walk down the aisle with as my maid of honor. My breath caught like glass shattering inside me. For a second, I couldn't move. I just stood there watching their lips meet, his hands on her the way they were supposed to be on me. My chest burned with humiliation, betrayal, and disbelief. The sound that escaped me wasn't even human. "Are you kidding me?" My voice cracked, loud enough to make them jolt apart. He jumped out of bed, fumbling for excuses. "Sienna, it's not what it looks like," I laughed, bitter and broken. "Not what it looks like?" "You're in my bed. With my sister. Do you want me to believe this is a business meeting?" My sister didn't even look ashamed. She just wrapped the sheet tighter around her and tilted her chin. "You were never right for him. We just fit better." Her words sliced deeper than the betrayal itself. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. Something inside me snapped. The tears blurred my vision, but my voice sharpened like a blade. "Congratulations, then. You deserve each other." I slammed the door before either of them could answer. My hands trembled as I pressed my back against the wall, sliding down until I hit the floor. I don't remember how long I sat there, knees pulled to my chest, sobbing until my throat went raw. Hours, maybe. The silence of the house pressed in around me, heavy and suffocating. Over the next few weeks, I drifted through life like a ghost. I canceled wedding appointments one by one, hearing the pity in the voices of florists and caterers who asked why. My parents told me to keep things civil, as if their affair was just a disagreement. Friends whispered about the scandal, their pitying glances cutting me open all over again. And my sister? She vanished into his arms without a word of apology. I thought the worst was over, that the betrayal was enough pain for one lifetime. But I was wrong. The universe wasn't finished with me yet. One afternoon, a small envelope slipped into my mailbox. Cream-colored, embossed with gold edges, and addressed to me in delicate handwriting. My stomach twisted as I opened it. Inside, a card gleamed with flowers and scripted letters. "You are invited to the wedding of Daniel and Claire." My eyes blurred as I read the names. My fiancé, my sister. Together. But the part that broke me wasn't just the invitation. It was the handwritten note at the bottom. 4 words, cruel and smug, written in her hand. "Come see true love." My chest hollowed out as the card shook in my fingers. First, they stole my future. Now they wanted me to sit quietly and clap while they sealed it. For the first time since that night, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even crumble. Instead, a strange fire lit inside me. I tucked the invitation back into its envelope, placed it carefully on my dresser, and stared at it until my reflection in the mirror didn't look broken anymore. That was the moment everything shifted. Because if they wanted me to come, oh, I would come, but not the way they expected. I stared at the wedding invitation for days. Sometimes I left it on the table just to see if it still felt real, and every time my eyes landed on it, my stomach knotted like it was happening all over again. The golden letters gleamed mockingly, Daniel and Claire. And at the bottom, the note that wouldn't stop echoing inside my head. "Come see what true love looks like." Those words were poison. Not just an invitation, but a dagger dressed in calligraphy. She wanted me humiliated. She wanted me to sit in the front row while they paraded their betrayal in white silk and vows. And the worst part? My own family wanted the same. When I finally told my parents what happened, I expected anger, maybe even outrage on my behalf. Instead, my mother just sighed, as though I'd misplaced my keys, not my future. "Sienna," she said softly, "you have to accept reality. Daniel loves Claire now. It's better to keep the family together than to hold grudges." My jaw nearly dropped. Keep the family together? He cheated on me. With your daughter, your other daughter. How are you not furious? Dad cleared his throat like he was mediating a business deal. Things happen between people. The important thing is you don't embarrass yourself. Show some grace. Support your sister in her new life. Support her? The word made bile rise in my throat. My sister had gutted me, and my parents wanted me to smile and clap. I shook my head, my voice breaking. You want me to stand there and celebrate them? After everything? Mom's eyes hardened, her tone sharper now. You always were dramatic, Sienna. Maybe that's why Daniel found comfort elsewhere. Claire has always been steadier. More grounded, her words sliced deeper than any knife. It wasn't enough that my sister betrayed me. They had to make it my fault, too. I stumbled out of their house that night feeling like an orphan, though both my parents were still alive. The streetlights blurred as tears stung my eyes, but inside me something darker brewed. Not just grief, not just anger, something heavier, a kind of numbness that only comes when everyone you trusted has twisted the knife. In the following weeks, their gaslighting only grew louder. My phone buzzed with messages. Don't ruin this for your sister. Be mature about it. Family comes first. Every word was another reminder that I didn't belong to them anymore, not really. I was disposable, expendable. Nights became the worst. I'd lie awake, replaying every detail. Daniel's laugh. Claire's smirk. My mother's sigh. My father's cold eyes. And always, always, that note at the bottom of the invitation. Come see what true love looks like. Those words haunted me. They were cruel, yes, but also clarifying. If that's what they called true love, then maybe it was time to redefine it for myself. Still, the pain was relentless. I pawed through old photos, wedding plans half-finished in binders, my dress hanging ghost-like in the back of the closet. Every piece of fabric, every flower arrangement mocked me, whispering what could have been. One night, I held the invitation over a candle flame, watching the edges curl black. My hands trembled, and for a moment I thought I'd let it burn. But something in me refused. I snuffed the flame out and placed the half-scorched card back in its envelope. I couldn't destroy it, not yet. Because some part of me knew this story wasn't finished. At dinner one evening, my parents tried again. My father leaned across the table, his voice stern. You will attend the wedding. End of discussion. If you cause a scene, don't bother coming home again. I felt the air leave my lungs. Home? The walls I grew up in no longer felt like mine. They'd chosen their loyalty, and it wasn't me. I rose from the table, every nerve buzzing. Don't worry, I said quietly. I won't embarrass myself. My mother gave a satisfied nod, mistaking my calm for surrender. But inside, my silence was a storm. That night, I lay awake staring at the invitation once more. The note at the bottom glittered under the lamplight. Come see what true love looks like, I whispered to the empty room, my voice low, steady, and dangerous. Oh, I'll come, but you'll regret inviting me. I didn't recognize myself in the mirror for weeks. My skin was pale, my eyes hollow, my body shrinking into the outline of someone who'd been stripped of everything. But somewhere in the wreckage, a quiet fire refused to die. And it whispered to me every morning, get up, so I did. At first, it was clumsy. I walked into the gym feeling like everyone could see through me, like they knew I was the girl whose fiancé had left her for her sister. The weights felt heavier than they should have, and the treadmill mocked me with every mile. But sweat carried away some of the grief, drop by drop, and in its place, something stronger began to grow. I started journaling again. Not the sweet little entries I used to write in college about crushes or plans for the weekend. These pages bled anger, betrayal, and sorrow. Words spilled out of me like venom I'd been forced to swallow for too long. But with every page, the poison thinned, and my sentences shifted. I noticed the change when one night, instead of writing, "Why me?" I wrote, "Watch me." The tears didn't vanish overnight. They still came late at night when the world was quiet and the ache roared back to life. But instead of drowning me, those tears washed me clean. I cried, then I planned. I mourned, then I rebuilt. The girl who once begged for scraps of love was gone. A woman was rising in her place. I started dressing differently. No more baggy sweaters to disappear into. I wore bold colors, sharp lines. I wanted my reflection to match the person clawing her way out from under the rubble. And slowly, I began to like what I saw again. One Friday afternoon, I wandered into a boutique downtown. My plan was just to browse, Maybe find something light for summer. But then I saw it. A dress, white, sleek, beautiful in a way that wasn't about weddings or purity or any of the cliches I used to cling to. This white was power. This white was defiance. I slipped it on in the dressing room, my hands trembling against the cool fabric. When I looked in the mirror, I gasped. For the first time in months, I didn't look broken. I looked dangerous, like a storm wrapped in silk. The saleswoman peeked in, her eyes widening. "You look like you're about to change someone's life," she whispered. I smiled, a small, knowing curve of my lips. "Maybe I am." I bought the dress without hesitation. Carried it home like it was armor. Hung it on my closet door so it would be the first thing I saw every morning. It wasn't just clothing. It was a promise. From that day on, every rep in the gym, every page in my journal, every tear that hit my pillow, all of it built toward that dress. Toward the moment I'd stand tall in it. Not as the woman abandoned, but as the woman no one saw coming. And as I stared at it one night, gleaming against the dark of my room, I whispered to myself, steady and certain, "They wanted me broken. Instead, I'll walk in stronger than ever." The morning of the wedding, I woke up before the sun. For weeks, I had imagined this moment, how I'd look, how I'd feel, but nothing could prepare me for the weight pressing on my chest. My dress hung across the room like a challenge. White. Unapologetic. A reminder of everything they had tried to steal from me. I slipped it on slowly, my hands steady despite the storm in my chest. My reflection stared back at me. Not a victim, not the broken girl they expected, but someone who had survived fire and chosen to walk straight into the flames again. By the time I arrived at the church, the ceremony was already buzzing with laughter and music. Guests in pastel suits and floral dresses milled around, chatting as though today was nothing more than a fairy tale. I stood at the doorway for a moment, letting the sound wash over me. And then I walked in. Gasps broke like waves through the room. A ripple of whispers followed me as heads turned, eyes widening. "Oh my God. Is that Sienna? She's wearing white? Who even invited her?" I felt their stares, heavy and accusing, but I didn't flinch. My heels clicked against the marble floor like drum beats, each step echoing louder than their muttered judgments. I kept my chin high, my gaze fixed forward, as though I owned the place. From the front pew, my mother's face blanched. She clutched my father's arm, whispering urgently. He shook his head, his jaw tight, refusing to meet my eyes. They wanted me invisible, forgotten. Instead, I had made myself unforgettable. Someone hissed behind me, low but sharp. "What is she doing here?" I didn't turn. I didn't need to. The answer was in every step I took. I belonged in this story, whether they liked it or not. When I reached the aisle, I slowed, letting my gaze sweep across the room. My old friends shifted uncomfortably. My relatives looked away, ashamed. And then finally, I saw them. My sister stood at the altar in her lace gown, glowing with the smugness of someone who thought she had won. Beside her, my ex-fiancé stiffened. His smile faltered the instant he saw me, and his face drained of color. The silence that followed was louder than the church organ. I could almost hear their thoughts. Why did she come? What is she planning? Good, let them wonder. Let them choke on the tension I carried with me like perfume. A groomsman leaned toward another, whispering too loudly. She's going to ruin everything. My sister's lips parted, trembling not with fear but with rage. For the first time, she looked unsettled. She clutched his hand tighter, as if she could squeeze away the ghost of me standing there in white. I took a seat near the middle, perfectly visible to everyone. I crossed my legs, folded my hands in my lap, and smiled. A calm, steady smile that said, "Go ahead. Pretend this is your fairy tale. I'll be right here to remind you it's built on lies." The priest shuffled nervously, glancing from the couple to me. The crowd's murmurs swelled, restless and uneasy, but I sat still, unshaken. My presence had already cracked their perfect picture, and the ceremony hadn't even begun. Inside, my heart pounded, but I let it. Fear had no place here anymore. Only resolve. And as the organ began to play, signaling the start of the vows, I whispered under my breath, almost smiling, "Let's see how perfect your fairy tale really is." The church had gone so quiet I could hear the rustle of lace from my sister's gown. She tried to pretend my presence didn't matter, but the tightness in her jaw told the truth. I sat there, steady, waiting. And then, Right as the priest lifted his book and began the vows, I rose to my feet. My heels clicked against the floor as I walked down the aisle, every step pulling the breath tighter from the crowd. Murmurs erupted. Someone hissed, "She's going to say something." They were right. I stopped halfway, close enough for everyone to see me clearly. My voice cut through the air like glass breaking. "Before you say I do, maybe you should tell everyone how this love story really started." Gasps shot through the pews. My sister's face froze. My ex-fiancé turned pale, beads of sweat forming along his hairline. "What are you doing?" My mother hissed from the front row, her face red with fury. I didn't look at her. I kept my eyes locked on the two people at the altar. 3 months before this wedding, I walked in on them, in my apartment, in my bed. That's how their fairy tale began. The room exploded with whispers, heads turning, hands covering mouths. My ex's lips trembled. "Sienna, stop, stop." I laughed bitterly. "You mean stop telling the truth?" "Because you had no problem lying to my face while sneaking around with her." My sister's mask finally cracked. "You don't get to ruin this day. This is my wedding." Her voice rose, shrill and desperate. I tilted my head, calm even as her fury burned. "Funny, you ruined mine first." That line hit like lightning. The crowd shifted visibly, the weight of betrayal sinking in. Some of my relatives shook their heads, whispering things like, "How could she do this?" And with her own sister? Others avoided my gaze entirely, unwilling to choose a side. And then the real blow came. I pulled out the folder I'd carried for weeks. I brought proof. Photos, messages, everything. I held it up, my hand steady. "You can all see for yourselves that their love story was built on lies." The groom's knees seemed to buckle. He sat down heavily on the nearest chair, burying his face in his hands. "Oh, God," my sister snapped, her voice shrill, desperate to regain control. "You're just jealous. You couldn't handle him, so now you're trying to take the spotlight from me." I stepped closer, my voice low but carrying. "No, I'm not stealing your spotlight. I'm showing everyone the fire you built it on." She screamed then, lunging toward me, her bouquet flying from her hands and hitting the floor with a dull thud. A bridesmaid rushed forward to hold her back. Guests gasped, phones came out, flashes flickered as whispers turned into gossip ready to spill into the world. "You'll regret this, Sienna." She shrieked. "You'll regret ever crossing me." But I only stood taller, my eyes never leaving hers. "The only thing I regret is ever believing blood meant loyalty." The silence that followed was deafening. Families weren't sure where to look. Parents sat frozen in humiliation. And my sister's perfect day cracked wide open for everyone to see. And as I turned to walk back down the aisle, I could feel the entire room splitting in half, some siding with me, others with her, but no one left untouched by the truth I had dropped like a bomb in the middle of her fairy tale. The wedding may have ended in chaos, but the real aftermath began the next morning. By sunrise, the entire town was buzzing. My phone lit up with messages, some from friends saying, "We can't believe you did that." Others from strangers applauding me for exposing the truth. But with whispers came poison. By noon, I saw what my sister had done. She went online, posting photos of herself in her torn wedding dress, mascara running down her cheeks. The caption read, "My jealous sister tried to destroy my wedding. She's obsessed with my fiancé and couldn't let us be happy." Thousands of comments rolled in. Some pitied her, some attacked me. And for a brief moment, I felt the sting of her lies winning. But I wasn't the same broken woman she betrayed. I had receipts. That evening, I sat in my living room with the folder on the table. My hands trembled, not with fear, but with fire. I opened my laptop, uploaded the messages, the photos, the late-night texts where my fiancé begged me to forgive him even as he kept sneaking around with her, and then I wrote, "She calls it true love. I call it betrayal. Here's the truth." I hit post. Within minutes, it exploded. Notifications piled in. The screenshots spread like wildfire. People who had once pitied her began tagging their friends, saying, "She lied." Others shared the proof, demanding, "Why would she do this to her own sister?" By midnight, my sister's attempt at rewriting history had collapsed. Her groom? Gone. He disappeared, deactivating his accounts, vanishing like smoke. He didn't defend her. He didn't defend me. He defended no one. Coward. I sat back in my chair, watching the storm rage online. My sister tried to comment, tried to deny, but every reply was another screenshot. Another nail in the coffin of her perfect image. One stranger wrote, "She tried to play the victim, But her sister played the truth. Another. This isn't a wedding story. This is a crime of betrayal. For the first time since the night I caught them, I felt the weight lifting. Not gone, but shifting. Still, the whispers in my own community didn't die overnight. At the grocery store, I caught people staring, nudging each other. At the gas station, 2 women pretended to scroll their phones while sneaking photos of me. Some called me brave. Others whispered that I was dramatic. But I realized something important. It didn't matter anymore. I had taken back the one thing my sister had stolen most: my voice. And when I looked at the viral thread, the thousands of shares, the comments flooding in, I knew one thing for certain. Her lies could no longer cage me. As I closed my laptop, I whispered into the dark, "You tried to bury me, but you forgot I'm not soil. I'm fire." When the dust settled, I found myself standing in front of a mirror I hardly recognized. The woman staring back wasn't the one who cried herself to sleep for weeks, clutching a pillow like it could mend the cracks in her chest. No. She was steadier, sharper, reborn. I signed the lease on a small apartment across town. It wasn't much, peeling paint on the walls, a leaky faucet, but it was mine. For the first time, I had a space untouched by my sister's shadow. Every box I unpacked felt like unloading a piece of my past, setting it down and walking away. I picked up a new job at a local design firm. The pay wasn't glamorous, but when I walked into that office, people saw me for my talent, not as her sister. For once, I was defined by my work, my ideas, my strength. The gym that once saw my tears now echoed with the sound of my laughter. I lifted weights not to numb the pain, but to celebrate the power in my body. My journal that once carried desperate questions now overflowed with plans, dreams, and gratitude. And slowly, the world responded. New friends came into my life. People who didn't know the betrayal, who didn't look at me through the filter of scandal. They saw me for who I was in that moment, not the broken girl, but the woman rebuilding. One night, sitting on my balcony, watching the city lights blink like scattered stars, I whispered to myself, betrayal didn't destroy me. It revealed me. I finally understood that strength isn't born in comfort. It's forged in fire. And though my heart carried scars, those scars had turned into armor. I closed my eyes, breathing deep, and felt something I hadn't in months. Peace. Word travels fast in small towns. And when the whispers reached me about my sister's marriage crumbling, I didn't feel joy. I felt clarity. Her picture-perfect fairy tale lasted less than a year. People said her husband cheated again, this time with a coworker. Some said he never stopped. Others claimed he only married her out of pride, to prove something after I exposed them. Either way, their house of glass had shattered. I heard she showed up at our parents' house crying. Mascara streaked down her face. For a moment, I imagined her in my old position, betrayed, abandoned, humiliated. And yes, part of me wanted to gloat, to scream, "Now you know how it feels." But when the chance finally came, when a friend asked me, "Aren't you happy she got what she deserved?" I surprised myself. I shook my head. "No," I said softly. "I don't need her to fall for me to rise." Because the truth is, I had already risen. I no longer measured my worth against her failures. My story wasn't about revenge, it was about reclaiming myself. Still, I couldn't deny the irony. The same man she had stolen turned around and betrayed her. The cycle she once unleashed came back to devour her. But instead of bitterness, I felt a strange compassion. Not for her lies, not for her cruelty, but for the simple reality. She had built her happiness on someone else's pain. And happiness built on destruction never lasts. As I sipped my coffee and listened to the rumors, I smiled. Not a cruel smile, but a peaceful one. My life had finally become mine again. And as for hers, that was her burden to carry. When the storm finally settled, I realized my parents weren't cheering for me. They weren't clapping at my survival or proud of the strength I'd found. They stood in silence, carrying shame, but still too proud to say the one word I deserved. Sorry. They had paraded my sister's lies as truth. They had called me dramatic, jealous, unstable. And now, with her marriage in ruins and my life blooming, they had nowhere left to hide. Their disappointment hung heavy, but it wasn't mine to carry anymore. One Sunday afternoon, I visited them out of courtesy. The house smelled the same, lavender mixed with old wood, but it no longer felt like home. My mother fussed in the kitchen, her hands shaking as she poured tea. My father sat in his usual chair, staring at the floor, speaking in half sentences. Neither of them could bring themselves to admit the role they played in my pain. Families go through things, my mother finally muttered. Yours just got out of hand. Out of hand? That was her version of betrayal, abandonment, and years of cruelty. I stared at her, waiting for more, but silence filled the room, and in that silence I understood. I could wait my whole life for an apology that would never come, or I could give myself the closure they never would. I sipped the tea slowly and smiled, not because I forgave them, but because I had stopped needing them. My worth was no longer tied to their approval. Their love had always been conditional, and I had finally stopped begging for scraps. That night, driving home, I pulled over to the side of the road. The sunset spread across the horizon, fiery oranges fading into soft blues. I rolled down the window and whispered into the wind. Sometimes losing everything is how you find yourself. And in that moment, I realized I had found myself. The future didn't arrive in a thunderclap. It came quietly, like dawn creeping across the horizon. Months turned into a year, and my life blossomed in ways I hadn't dared imagine. My career soared. The design firm promoted me, and for the first time, people looked at me with respect instead of pity. I had my own home, filled with laughter, music, and the smell of fresh flowers I bought every Friday just for myself. I thought about kids sometimes, not as replacements for what was stolen, but as a choice. A future I might walk into one day on my own terms. The idea didn't scare me anymore, because now I knew I was enough on my own. Friends became family. We celebrated birthdays, holidays, and the small victories that stitched life together. These people had chosen me, stood by me, and never once asked me to shrink so someone else could shine. One evening, sitting on my balcony with a glass of wine, I reflected on it all. The betrayal, the humiliation, the heartbreak, it had nearly broken me. But it had also pushed me toward a freedom I never knew I needed. My sister thought she had stolen my happiness. She paraded around in my dress, flaunted my fiancé, and laughed at my tears. But in trying to take everything from me, she had unknowingly handed me the greatest gift. She gave me the freedom to build a life no one could take away. And as the city lights glittered in the distance, I leaned back, breathing deeply, and smiled. Not because the past didn't hurt. It always would, but because I was no longer chained to it. This was my life now. Beautiful. Untouchable. Mine.